The sun cleared the ridge, casting long shadows across the 5-acre homestead. Rob reached for the iron latch of the main gate. The metal groaned, then clicked open. Beside him, Sherry moved with a heavy feed bucket, the weight shifting as she stepped onto the gravel path. They did not walk alone. Ranger stayed glued to Rob's left side, his head low, eyes scanning the perimeter of the barn. Behind them, Abby and Winter trotted in tight formation, their noses twitching at the scent of damp earth and clover. This was the ritual. Every morning required the same check, the same sweep of the property line. Rob paused to verify the gate was secure behind them. Ranger stopped instantly, his stance firm, guarding the transition between the outside world and the pasture. The 3 dogs formed a perimeter, ears swiveling to catch the faint rustle of the brush. Sherry checked her grip on the bucket, adjusted her pace, and nodded. The homestead was awake. The patrol had begun. Rob led the way toward the paddock, his boots crunching on the dry grass. 2 horses stood by the fence, their heads dipping low as he approached. He reached out, his hands steady as he patted their necks, feeling the warmth of their skin against the cool morning air. While he worked, Ranger pulled away from the group. The dog moved with purpose, weaving through the thick brush near the fence line, his ears twitching at every hidden sound. The air was still until a sudden flutter of movement erupted from the hayloft. Lily the cat launched herself into the air, landing with a soft thud on a fence post. The sound was sharp, immediate. Abby and Winter stopped dead, their heads snapping toward the post, muscles coiled in instant reaction. Ranger pivoted, his gaze locked on the cat for a long, silent second. Lily blinked once, then turned away, unbothered. The tension in the dogs snapped. They shook themselves, paws dancing back to the path, and resumed their patrol. The moment passed, but the homestead remained under their absolute watch. John and Debbie moved toward the coop. The rhythm of their work was steady, a sequence of opening latches and reaching into nesting boxes. White birds swarmed around their boots, clucking as eggs were gathered into baskets. A short distance away, the back pasture held a different scene. 6 cows grazed on the tall grass, anchored by a bull. Near the outer boundary, a small calf named Hope strayed from the group. She wobbled on thin legs, pushing past the tall clover, and headed straight for the wire fence. The gap in the mesh was wide enough for her to slip through, exposing her to the open field beyond. The herd ignored the movement, continuing to graze. Abby, stationed near the barn, caught the shift in the calf's trajectory. She broke into a low, ground-eating trot, closing the distance between herself and the fence. Just as Hope reached the wire, Abby nudged her side firmly, forcing the calf to stumble backward. The calf blinked, turned, and followed the dog back toward the safety of the herd. The fence line remained undisturbed. The cycle of the morning continued as if nothing had changed. Jalen crossed the yard toward the back enclosure, carrying a heavy bucket. She reached the troughs where the 2 pigs waited, their snouts pushing against the wood as she poured the fresh feed. A few yards away, the 3 young lambs grazed in the clover, heads down, completely focused on the crop. Jalen watched them for a moment, adjusted her glasses, and turned back toward the main house. The morning chores were winding down. One by one, the people converged on the wide front porch. Rob and John walked up the steps, voices low as they discussed the harvest plans for the garden. Debbie followed, catching up with Sherry to exchange notes on the morning collection. As they settled into the shade, the dogs moved into position. Ranger, Abby, and Winter did not simply lie down. They fanned out, creating a physical barrier between the humans and the open yard. They sprawled on the grass, forming a precise, protective triangle. Each dog kept its head up, eyes scanning the perimeter of the property. The activity of the day shifted from individual labor to a shared, unified presence. The homestead felt anchored, silent, and entirely under their watch. The light changed first. It thinned, turning the tops of the Oregon pines into jagged silhouettes against a bruised purple sky. The warmth drained from the grass, replaced by the cooling damp of the earth. Rob stood up from the porch, his joints popping with the movement, and began the final round. He walked the perimeter, checking the latch on the coop, the tension of the fence wire, and the heavy bolt on the barn door. One by one, the animals retreated into their shelters, the rhythmic sound of hooves and paws on dirt fading into the background. Ranger followed him, step for step, his ears swiveling to catch the shift in the night air. Rob reached the main gate. He swung the iron frame shut, the metal clanking with a finality that echoed across the quiet property. He slid the bolt home. Outside the fence, the shadows lengthened, but the homestead remained contained. Rob placed his hand on the top of Ranger's head, feeling the coarse hair and the steady, rhythmic pulse beneath his palm. The dog leaned into the weight, watching the dark tree line. The chores were done. The livestock were settled. The perimeter was held. Everything was exactly where it needed to be as the stars emerged.